we'll return to our projects test feature. Now, I think I'm going to change this. I'm going to rename the file. And rather than something more generic like projects test, well, what is the feature? The feature is that a user can manage projects. So I'm going to change this to manage projects test. It's a very small thing, but I think it does make a difference. Next, I noted in the previous episode that these 3 tests here related to what guests cannot do. We can keep them separate, or why don't we just try to merge them? So if we're always going to create a project, and in this case I'll have to say project to array, well, we can just merge them. People disagree. A common phrase is 1 assertion per test, but in other cases, I think it can be useful to keep things a bit more contained. Now I can just say guests cannot control projects or manage projects in any form. All right, so now, given we have a project, well, if you try to persist a new one to the database, you should be redirected. If you try to access the dashboard, you should be redirected. I'll put that up top. And if you try to access a project specifically, you should be redirected. All right, let's give that a run. And it still passes, but yeah, that's another way that you might handle guest-related tests like this. Entirely up to you, though. I don't think one is better than the other. Anyways, next, one thing you'll notice is that if I go to my routes file, we have a dashboard route, and we could even name that dashboard if we want. Next, we have a route to show a project, and then we have a route that will actually persist the project to the database. But we don't have one to create the project. So this is where we have to decide, well, is that its own page? Is it a modal that pops up? I'm honestly not sure yet. We'll deal with that when we get to the UI phase. For now, I'm going to treat it as its own page. But yeah, if we change it later, I'll just delete the test. No big deal. Okay, so if you visit /projects/create, we will hit a projects controller at create. But before I do that, let's confirm that through a test. Now you'll notice one thing I personally do is I don't write a test that will visit a create page, fill out a form, click the submit button. It's a very end-to-end style test. Just from experience, I find it often ends up being very brittle. And as soon as I change something in my form 6 months later, the tests break, and it's not always clear why it broke, and it ends up just being frustrating. So what I've found is I get the most bang for my buck if I just prepare the attributes and hit the endpoint. So I assume the form is good to go. I don't test that. I guess you could do actual browser tests for that, but honestly, often I don't. I will assume the form data, and then I will hit the endpoint that actually persists and validates the information. I feel like that's where most of the issues will end up being. Nonetheless, though, one thing you might do is you could say, well, if I visit projects create, at the very least, I expect that to be a page that loads. So I'm going to assert status 200. So yeah, we're not filling out the form programmatically. We're just making sure, okay, the page to create a project should exist. And then from that point, if I prepare the attributes and hit the endpoint to persist the project, that should work as well. Anyways, if I give this a run now, it should fail, and it does. Model not found. So what's probably happening is one of these other routes is responding, the wildcard here. So now if I remove that comment, we should have a new error. There we go. The create method does not exist. All right, projects controller. And I'll add that right down here. Run it again. And we now get green. Okay, great. So let's return a view projects.create like so. And we'll create that resources views projects create.blade.php. Okay, let's see what we're working with here. So at the moment, let's see, we have our index page, and we haven't yet switched over to a layout file, which we should. And then we have our show page. So I'm going to duplicate this one more time, and then I think very likely in the next episode, we're going to focus on the UI. We're going to embrace our layout file, and I will start writing the necessary CSS to style everything. So here would be create a project. And again, this would be, if I were using Bulma, I don't think we will, but we would have something like this. You would need the title, the description, like so. Finally, I would need another one for the submit field. Yeah, something like that. So again, I'm just doing this to have some quick styling here. But if we were using something like the Bulma framework, we could then wrap all of this within a container, Bring this in, and you get the basic idea. But yeah, I don't think we'll be using Bulma, even though I do quite like it. And then finally, let's give that some padding top. Anyways, if we were to take a look at this in the browser, we would get something like this. Okay, so now the form should submit a post request to /projects. And then don't forget to add your CSRF field. So think about it. At this point, we would hit the store method here, and we would validate that you did give us a title and a description, which will be present here and here. All right, so we have my new project, Lorem, and there we go. It's now available. So again, you'll notice for that create page, I'm not testing the form itself at all. I'm just testing what happens when you click the button. So that's something to be aware of. Okay. Anyways, if we come back to Manage Projects Test, let's make sure that we add the necessary assertion. Because remember, at the moment, well, if I did not have this within my middleware group, if it was just right here, well, if I were to switch back and reload, this will still work, even if we were a guest. So I want to make sure that never happens or can't happen. So we'll say right here, let's do another one. Project/create should also redirect you to the login page. Okay, so if I run that test, it will fail, and that's what we want. So let's bring this back to what we had before, give the test to run again, and now it's working.